Link below for further information. I agree that our issues should not be staked in partisanism, and also that the corporate sector purchased influence in our national and international affairs, which enables it to function as an unelected, quasi-government which only seeks its own interests and not that of the people. Disney had to be told to stay in its lane, especially after having the gall to declare its attempt perceived ability to overturn a law as voted in by the majority of Floridians to include a significant number of Democrats. It also thought it could stay overturning its permitted but essentially unlawful status as its own jurisdiction. Of particular concern is the forced affirmative action coming from critical race theory as a person of color and a woman. I know this is unnecessary, unwise and offensive to both whites and any other individual with common sense. It's a violation of equal protection for all under Title VII and extremely insulting to me. We don't need to be led along in the workplace like overgrown children. I worked remotely for a firm contracting with my state that installed the original version of the DAE program, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, as DRI, Diversity, Racial Equity and Inclusion. Their mission statement, drafted by CEO Action, once openly spoke of installing blacks first at a higher rate than reflected in our overall percentage, but that had to be toned down. http://v.gd/RISC4. We had a diversity officer and had to fill out by mandate the same obnoxious poll each week which asked if we were satisfied with our treatment there as minorities. I couldn't express the fact that the only thing which troubled me or made me feel unequal was the DMN survey. 2.5 months into the job, January 6th happened. I make no bones about being a Trump supporter but didn't run around announcing it. Jobs in the social sciences and academia are usually left-leaning, but despite that several conservatives were on staff including my direct supervisor. She confided after I privately complained to her that the CEO was a scared rabbit who jumped onto the Black Lives Matter bandwagon because they damaged our headquarters during the 2020 riots. He sent several company-wide emails before my arrival that spouted off on our need to kowtow to BLM. They were severe and all of the senior staff told him to tone it down. On the 6th he sent out the most inflammatory statement I have ever read, practically demonizing every Trump voter in existence, up to 74 million people, because of the assumption Trump incited violence. Only a relative few people, as compared to 1 million plus attendees, lost the plot and started trouble, including Antifa as confirmed by WUSA 9 News. But everyone was essentially unarmed and the 300 to 400 rounded up by law enforcement at that time included several grandmothers charged with parading. Much worse in women's behavior was displayed during the Kavanaugh hearings. Our government sometimes creates panic. An example is McUltra. We believe the pandemic and its alienation of families is one also. What happened primarily on one side of the rotunda seems to share some of the same elements of the staged Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping debacle, in which FBI agents encouraged and trapped a pre-selected group of men they commanded. A key figure among the Sixers, Riots, was definitely a double agent. Incidentally, Ms. Whitmer and Nancy Pelosi are known for spurring their own insurrections at capitals, and Antifa was very active at the one in Sacramento in January 2021. The only person who got homicided on 1/6 was Ashley Babbitt. The two officers cited as suicide victims had latent heart attacks, and the rumored old woman trampled underfoot was in fact a 30-something who died of an overdose. But of course we all had a legitimate scare. The said CEO's email luckily wasn't read until the 8th, or it would have been even more angering. He was talking out of his presumption and ignorance about us being thugs and white supremacists. I've met a few bubbas in my time but no one from the Aryan Nation. And black conservatives are called WSs now, Candace Owens, Larry Elder and Clarence Thomas. Despite desperately wanting to be in DC, I was stuck in Baltimore. It was probably for the best given how aggressively the government went after everyone at the Capitol. All the high majority of patriots wanted was for our insolent, elitist Congress to see and hear us and concede to an audit of the election, at least in the swing states. I don't know, or know of, anyone who wants it arbitrarily overturned. The whole point is to know it was free and fair. Our very citizenship is contained in that. And we did see some weird things to cause suspicion, and there are hours of testimony given to them under oath or in accordance with sworn affidavits. Trump didn't tell us that the election was off at the time of its start. We told him. Under the strain of all of that, I shot back at the CEO with an email rebuttal. Of course, it's rarely the case that someone at his level receives direct communication from entry-level employees, but I was nervous about retaliation. I was black but a Trump supporter. My supervisor, and also the diversity officer, urged me to stay, but there was no choice. My nerves wouldn't stand it. Make America Safe Again was launched as a personal project in 2020 after seeing our cities continually terrorized and destroyed by people who said they were just protesting. More often than not, the casualties of war were their own black neighbors. And what they were raging against were isolated incidents that were rare or not at all as initially portrayed. I know how militant some can be, because my uncle was in the Free Angela Davis movement, but what happened during the George Floyd reaction was 10 times worse, and it was unbelievable that the National Guard wasn't brought in as with every time before. Kate Brown of Oregon said she didn't think they knew how to handle these matters. $2 billion and 24 murdered were low estimates. I know concretely that both were underreported. Some lost everything had materially because of being or underinsured. Those businesses were families' means of support just like our jobs are. Some people were even attacked at home. Now we're dealing with the aftermath of the challenge to Roe v. Wade. It was only a very obscure example of a court decision having to do with privacy that happened to mention abortion. It was not codified into law, nor does it allude to constitutional provision for abortions. And striking it would put the authority only with the states. It has been up to states to decide their own policies exclusively for multiple decades now. But the people so intent on killing babies up through the 9th month and beyond are incensed that they can't have the universal, taxpayer-funded, right to that slaughter, so they traveled to the private homes of our Supreme Court justices to harangue and harass them, making a truly frightening experience for their spouses and children. I live just outside of D.C. and the streets throughout the DMV were, for a couple of days, filled overwhelmingly with police cars, marked and unmarked, but with continuously flashing lights. Fire trucks were roaring up and down the road as well. On the first day, one half of a major boulevard was blocked off and yellow police tape was stretched across 2 local avenues. The police were also on high alert because of the promise by Antifa and other similar groups such as Ruth sent us to storm and desecrate churches on Mother's Day to champion women's rights. There was not even a quarter of that first responder activity with any of the Stop the Steal rallies, including the most infamous one which came just before January 20th. For our events as conservatives, we can and do apply for permits. No one was granted written permission to heckle Clarence Thomas outside of his house. And it reminds me of when activists traveled to the homes of Electoral College delegates to compel the vote for Hillary. It was a matter of conscience as well as the overall number of EC votes that Hillary was not certified. She posed a real and present threat to our national security with her loose emails. Tell us, please, with proof, when did we as conservatives ever loot as a large group, set arson fires, shoot security guards like David Dorn, firebomb federal courthouses, or crisis pregnancy centers, commandeer police stations to drive officers out while stealing weapons, or vandalize historic monuments? Have we shouted, screamed and cried maniacally in selfie videos over not being aborted or rightfully being barred from teaching kids objectionable material? Do we, as a habit, beat up elderly voters for supporting the wrong candidate, or attack others for being proud of the flag? Have we physically intimidated children for wearing the wrong campaign gear? Do our representatives publicly instruct their constituents to corner Biden supporters or other Democrats? Do we make a habit of stalking those with which we have differences? Did we fake anti-white hate crimes to stir unrest? Did we publicly wish popular leftist commentators death or greater suffering in life because we didn't agree with them? The answer to all those pointed questions is no. And why have Elon Musk along with Bill Maher and Dave Rubin broken ties with most of those on the left? Why did former leftist activists Brandon Straka and Amala Akpunobi commit themselves to conservative causes? Because they've seen all that I have every day. Thank you for your consideration. We hope you #walkaway.